Okay, so we are officially recording, and this is going to be the topic of sex-linked inheritance and how the notation is going to be different than just doing basic plain old dominant recessive inheritance or autosomal inheritance. So I am going to share my screen with you now so that you can look at my notes, essentially, my PowerPoint. Show all windows. I have a million things open right now. Sex-linked traits notes. There it is. That's what I want to show you. Okay. And then I'm going to close out the. This worked for me yesterday. No. I'm going to make you small. There we go. Made you small. Okay. Okay, so where are we going to start? Let's start right here. So typically when we are in class together, I like to introduce sex linkage by talking about color blindness. And it works out nicely when I have a student who's colorblind in class, which we do this year. I won't share it if that person doesn't want to share it. And they usually like to share it, and it's always interesting to do this little colorblind test with them and see which ones they actually are unable to tell the number of. So if you ever want to play around, there is a company called Enchroma, and they produce glasses that help colorblind people see color. So these are just some, screenshots from the internet of some basic color discrimination tests. So you would have to be able to look at this first set of colored dots and see this is the number 25. And that means you have normal color vision for the type of color blindness this one's testing. In the middle, you see the number 45. A little harder to see, but still can see it. This one on the right, you can see the number 6. Now, depending on what type of color blindness a person has, they may not be able to see some or all. If you want to go through this more, there is an online colorblind test at enchroma.com. It's fun, it's interesting. You just got to be aware of the fact that your screen settings and your pixelation on your computer or on your phone might also interfere with your ability to really see it well. So don't freak out if there's one or two you can't tell the difference of. I think you would know by now if you were colorblind. You would not, not know. Okay, so why does it say my screen sharing is paused? I don't want it to be paused. I want you to see my screen. Let me come back and check in with you. Natalie is waiting. Let's get her in. Hi, Natalie. I hope you can hear me okay. So we're just about to get started. Just FYI, I am going to be recording this. Screen sharing is paused. I'm going back to you guys. Can you guys give me a thumbs up if you can see my computer screen? You can see these color blindness patches, dots of a 25, and you see the 45. No, you can't see that. Okay, so that's why it's saying my screen sharing is paused. So let's go back and do that. Oh, someone else is in the waiting room. We got some latecomers. Let me go back and get them. Should probably just get rid of the waiting room. Okay, hi, welcome, latecomer, no problem. Okay, figuring out some technical stuff. Share is pause. Let's do new share. This is what I want to be sharing, this. Share. Okay, now do you see the circles, the dots with the colors?
Yeah.
Okay, now you see an orange 25 and a dot of blue circles or green circles, whatever those are. Just give me a thumbs up if you see circles with numbers in them. Okay, great. Thank you. Awesome. All right, now it says I'm sharing. Sorry for the delay. Okay, I'm gonna make you guys small again, so I'm not gonna see your video, your pictures, your images anymore. Get rid of those. I just want to show you my screen. If you need to stop me, you're welcome to unmute yourself and chime in. I might not know who's talking at that very moment, so just identify yourself. And it's just easier if we don't all talk at one time. So keep yourself muted unless you have a question. Okay, so color blindness is a sex-linked inheritance pattern. It's a sex-linked disorder. Most sex-linked disorders are found on the X chromosome, which everybody has an X chromosome. If you're a male, you only get one X chromosome because your other sex chromosome is a Y. If you're a female, you get 2 X chromosomes, no Y. And that's barring no mutations or other disorders. This is just a reminder that you do have 46 chromosomes, which means there's 23 pair. Those first 22 that are numbered 1 through 22, those are called autosomes. So when we talk about autosomal inheritance, we're talking about a pattern or a trait that's inherited on any one of those numbers 1 through 22. When we talk about sex-linked inheritance, which is our focus for today, we're talking about inheritance on the X or the Y. Now, these are just cartoons and they're not drawn to scale. I'll show you a better diagram later, but the Y is really tiny. There's practically no DNA on the Y chromosome compared to the amount of DNA on the X. So there's a great deal of ways that the X can carry a trait, because there's a lot more genes on the X. I'll show you that in a minute when I get to another picture. So this picture here at the top right is a more accurate, this is actually an image from a scanning electron microscope of these chromosomes from someone's cell. And they're labeled. The X is the much larger one and the Y is the much smaller one. These are obviously in condensed coiled form. These cells must have been undergoing division because these chromosomes are able to be seen in that shape under the microscope. And that's why they're double-stranded too. You can see the double-stranded there. So determining sex, you have to know, this kind of is review, that we have 46 chromosomes, 22 of them are autosomes, and then we get that last pair of sex chromosomes. You already have to know that a female has an XX combination and a male has an XY combination. We will need to include the genotype. That's what that XX and XY are. This is the genotype. Need to include that when we're doing Punnett square crosses to try to determine how these inheritance patterns work when they're sex-linked. This biological sex is determined at fertilization. The male sperm is going to either have an X in it or a Y in it, and depending on which sperm actually wins the race and fertilizes the egg, that's going to be what determines biological sex. So the female can only put X's in her chromosomes, X chromosomes in her eggs, because she only has 2 X's to give. Remember, we put half of all of our chromosomes in every gamete we make. So ladies, you can only provide 1 of your X's, so every egg you make has an X. Males, you have X's and Y's, and so you are going to be able to provide either an X or a Y in any of those gametes, those sperm that are made. Let me get this thing out of the way. I don't know if you guys see that there. Okay, so sex linkage is going to work a lot like Mendelian inheritance. You have to still understand the concept of dominant versus recessive, heterozygous versus homozygous. It was just built upon those principles by a fellow here. This is Thomas Hunt Morgan. And yes, those are flies having sex. So he studied fruit flies and he determined that there are certain traits in fruit flies that are going to be passed down via the sex chromosomes. I'm just checking if anybody's waiting in the wait. No. Okay, there's 10 of those and that's all that's here so far. So how do you figure this out? Well, so this guy, Thomas Hunt Morgan, this is posted on my website. You don't have to try to write things down fast now. These are just my notes on my website. He worked with fruit flies, and he's the one that figured out that there are certain traits that are only on the X chromosome. And he used fruit flies just because they're really easy to breed. You get a whole new generation of fruit flies in only 2 weeks, and they're really simple to track the chromosomes of because there's only 4 pair of chromosomes. They have a diploid number of 8. So what he figured out is that there are sex-linked traits, and most sex-linked traits are found on the X chromosome, and most are a recessive inheritance pattern. That's going to be important to know, and that's going to be important in interpreting the genotypes that we write out when we're doing problems to illustrate sex linkage. So here is just illustrations of chromosomes that have different alleles. When you look at the chromosome combination here on the left, this is a female. She has 2 X chromosomes drawn just very simply in their single-stranded form. And the female could have 1 allele, that's the typical, normal, usual gene for a trait. And she could have an altered gene. She can have an allele that has a mutation or that is the incorrect form of that gene. But she's got 1 healthy form, one typical, usual form. So since she has 2, and since most mutations are recessive, she'll be fine. She's got 1 dominant allele to be expressed, and that's going to be the one that comes out in most of her cells. The male, though, does not have 2 X's. He only has 1 X, pictured here in the bigger one on the left, this right side picture, and he has a Y. And the Y does not have all the same alleles as the X chromosome. It does have some that are in common, but does not have a lot of it. So if he has only that altered condition on his allele on the X chromosome, then that's the one he gets to express, and he doesn't have any other version to express. So that's it for him. So these conditions are going to happen much more frequently in males because they only get 1 X, and that's the genes they have to express. So X-linked disorders is a really important fact to take home. X-linked disorders are expressed more frequently in males than in females because males only have that 1 X chromosome with those genes to express. It's the only one they can use. All right, so we're going to write out genotypes and just kind of see where those alleles get passed. So in an affected father, affected meaning he has one of these sex-linked traits, like let's say color blindness. So if this father is affected, this particular slide set is showing colored in, representing carrying the affected allele. And then not colored in is going to be the normal healthy allele. And there's a few different ways we can notate this in doing problems. So this father is affected. He has one affected X, that's his only X, and he has a Y. Every daughter that he ends up producing gets his X, and every son that he ends up producing gets his Y. Remember, that's how sex is determined in humans. The male sperm determines biological sex. The female, the mom, can only pass on X's to any of her kids. So all of her sons and all of her daughters will get one of these two X's, and both of them are normal. She's what we call a non-carrier. She does not have any copy of the defective or mutated allele. So in this case, she's got two white X's, whereas the father has that one affected mutated allele. He has a purple colored X. So when you fill in what possible combinations could be produced, you can see that father can pass only his affected X to his daughters. So all of his daughters that he ends up producing are going to get an affected X from dad, and they're going to get a normal healthy X from mom. Okay? Any sons that come from this affected father are getting his normal Y, and they're getting their normal X from their mom. So when we interpret these phenotypes, and interpret the genotypes and say what their phenotype are, you would say that out of the 4 possible combinations of alleles, you have 2 of the 4 are carrier daughters. So a total of 50% are carrier daughters because they have one faulty copy, that's the purple one, and one normal copy. So they'll show the normal trait. They won't be colorblind if this is colorblindness. And the sons are totally normal, not affected at all. So it's 50% total carrier daughters, 50% normal unaffected sons. Now, if we change the scenario and we give that faulty allele now to the mom, mom is going to pass her X to every one of her offspring, but she's got 2 of them. So it's just every time it's going to be like a coin flip, 50-50 shot. She could give her daughter this X with the purple, or she could give her daughter the clean, the healthy X, the white one. It's a 50-50 shot. Same thing with her sons. She could give her son the purple one, or she could give her son the white one. Fathers, remember, still only give their X's to their daughters and only give their Y's to their son. So pass it down. Father has a healthy X. He can give that to the daughter. Mother can give her unhealthy X. So that's one possible combination. The next possible combination is dad giving his healthy X to a daughter and mom giving her healthy X to a daughter. So out of the 2 daughter combinations, one is a carrier and one is totally unaffected and normal. Now let's look at the sons. Dad gives his Y, mom gives an X to a son. So she could either give her affected X, that purple one, or she could give her a healthy one. So in the end, we have a 50% chance of the sons inheriting the faulty X. But remember, the sons only have one X to get. So if you have that one affected X, that's the one you show. So that's the one you're going to express, and that's going to be the one that actually makes the protein, and that's going to be the one that shows up the trait. So when you interpret the phenotype, this daughter is a carrier. That's 25% of our options here. This daughter is non-carrier. She's completely normal and unaffected. Carriers are also not going to show the trait, but we still call them a carrier to refer to the fact that they have one faulty allele. This son, he's not a carrier because he only has one X. He has it. He's affected. He's going to show this color blindness trait. This son is totally normal, not affected at all. So 25% chance of having an unaffected son. Now, if we want to interpret all of their sons only, okay, this is another confusing thing that happens in sex linkage. If we want to interpret their sons, we have to say only from the sons. Like if I ask you, what's the chance of them having a colorblind son? You have to only look at the son possibilities. And you have to realize, oh, it's a 50-50 shot. The son could either be colorblind or not be colorblind. So it's actually a 50% chance when I ask you what's their chance of having, of their sons being colorblind. What is the chance of their sons being colorblind? It's 50% chance. All right, 1 out of those 2 sons. I did ask you to make notes on a few examples of these sex-linked inheritance patterns. One of them is hemophilia. This is a blood clotting disease. So if you cut yourself, you have a hard time stopping the bleeding. There's a few types of hemophilia, but they are X-linked and recessive. Then there is color blindness, which is the one we started with. So those are the two main ones that come up the most frequently in test questions. If you see color blindness or if you see hemophilia, you've got to know those are X-linked recessive inheritance patterns. Then there's one more that goes along with a movie I used to like to show. It's called Lorenzo's Oil. It's, sometimes you can find it on HBO. It's a great film, and it's based on a true story. This is a disease called ALD, adrenoleukodystrophy. And in the movie, you'll see, played by actors, of course, but the real boy Lorenzo, by the time he was like 6 years old, this disease started manifesting and he started losing all brain function. And his parents basically changed their life around to come up with a treatment for the disease. And now the disease is treatable thanks to what his parents discovered. It's an amazing story. But the disease is X-linked recessive, which means it came from the X chromosome that the mother gave to Lorenzo. It's called ALD. All right, so let's talk about notation and how we're going to write this out. You're going to see this written in a few different ways, and you could use whatever you're comfortable with. So when we're writing out genotypes, remember this is the combination of alleles that you write out when you're solving a problem. We have to use the X's and the Y's. If you're talking about a female, you have to write 2 X's. If you're talking about a male, you have to write an X and a Y. So when we set up our Punnett square, the mother, you have to show her 2 X's, and the father, you have to show his X and his Y. There's different ways you can notate this. So you can say a normal mother has just 2 X's and not make any marks on them. And you can interpret the 2 normal X's as normal. They don't have any marks on them. Sometimes you might see it written as she has 2 dominant alleles for whatever that trait is. So we're just using a random letter N to show the trait. That could be hemophilia, it could be color blindness, it could be adrenoleukodystrophy, whatever sex-linked trait we're talking about. So if she's completely normal, she has 2 dominant alleles. If she was a carrier, you could mark her with a carrier, like a C for carrier, or you can mark her and say she has 1 dominant allele with whatever letter you were using. I'm using just N for consistency. And she has a recessive allele. So here, this X with the little n is representing her being heterozygous. Now there's also like a slang kind of notation, a sloppy notation, like a quick hand notation, shorthand if you will, where you just kind of make a slash on an affected X, and then you don't make a slash on a normal X. That might be faster for you when you're working on a problem if you want to use that notation. But just make sure you know how to interpret it. So these are all different ways of saying she's a carrier or heterozygous for this sex-linked trait. If she were affected, she'd have to have both of her X's have that recessive allele. She'd have to have both of those colorblind C's if you're talking about colorblindness, or she'd have to show both of those lowercase recessive letters for the trait, which we just happen to be regularly using N for. Or if you're using your slash kind of shorthand method, you got to put slashes on both of her X, or on both of her X's, because that means both of her X's are affected, and that's the only way a female can show an X-linked trait. Let's talk about males. A normal male, you could just write out plain old X and Y, and that clean X there is like saying he has the normal X, not affected. Or you could give him the dominant allele, whatever letter you're using, we're using N here to show the dominant allele. There cannot be carriers in males. They only get 1 X, so there will be no carriers. There's no heterozygous form. If he has his X affected, he is going to show the trait. So you can write out the affected X the same way we wrote out the females, but he just has 1 along with his Y. Or you can write out that lowercase n, or you can do the shorthand with the little slash just marking the X. I don't know if my control bar is blocking your view there, okay? I tend to go with the shorthand and marking the slash, honestly. That's how I like to work out problems. Okay, and this is on my notes. If you want to go back and revisit it on my notes. Okay, this I am gonna have to figure out how to show you. Oh, chat. Okay, let's see what questions popping up. I have a question. All right, unmute yourself if you have a question. Go ahead, Victoria.
Hi. Okay.
Hi, what's up? Yeah.
Then, so males can't be carriers at all?
Correct. Males will not be able to carry a sex-linked trait.
So
okay.
even so, if for like if something they were to have it, they're gonna have it automatically.
Yes. So when we look at statistics, I don't know if you did the Khan Academy Ed Puzzle that I assigned yet. The Khan Academy Ed Puzzle went into calculating the statistics of how likely it is for a male to get a sex-linked trait versus a female, and it's quite staggeringly different. Much, much easier for a male to show a sex-linked trait than a female. You don't have to know how to calculate that. I just remember that coming up as oh, shocking. Yes, you have to know it happens more in males.
So for sure, if something were to happen, like the mom to have it, and the son would probably most likely have it then.
Correct. So that's what we're going to work out through inheritance patterns and practice problems. You're going to see that if a mom actually has a sex-linked trait, which is really rare, it's very rare to find a colorblind female compared to finding a colorblind male. But you're right, if a female has it and she's a mother and she has kids, her sons are going to have it.
Do that.
I don't know that. All right.
Yes, all of her sons are going to have it. Okay. Good observation, good question. Any other questions before we move into some practice problems? Okay, what might be a good thing for you to do here is if you can get yourself a little piece of scrap paper and scribble some stuff out, because I can't actually write on this screen. I can pull up a whiteboard and write on another screen, but it would be good for you to practice it yourself as well. Okay, so grab a piece of scrap paper so you can write this out. I am going to basically take a picture of the problem we're presenting here. Essentially, we're trying to do a female hemophilia carrier, meaning she only has one of the faulty alleles, and we're going to cross her with a male hemophilia. Remember, hemophilia is an example of sex-linked recessive inheritance on the X chromosome. It's one of those two main examples I want you to know, hemophilia and colorblindness. So what we're going to see as a result, we've got to calculate. Now, I'm going to just quickly take a picture of my problem so I remember what I'm doing when I go to my whiteboard. And I'm going to switch my screen so I can write on my screen. New share. I'm going to, why is it not giving me an option for a whiteboard? It usually gives me an option for a whiteboard. I don't think this is it. I think this is something from,
What do you think?
let me see. I should just get a piece of paper and hold my camera up to it instead of being so fancy here. All right, where's my whiteboard? Zoom. Give me my whiteboard. No, that's not it. New share. No, that's not it. New share.
Joseph, it's not times. You said the right thing. You shut your hand up.
No, file.
No, bro.
No. Oh, maybe I can just pull it up. No, I can pull up the other one. Okay, here's what we're gonna do instead. We're gonna go back to my PowerPoint that I can't write on, and I'm gonna just type it in. Nope, that's not it. This one. Okay. Okay, so you can still see my screen, hopefully. Yes, it says I'm sharing. So basically, I need to do a little bit of inserting here. Sorry, it's gonna take a little longer doing it this way. I can't just simply write. So if she is, the mom is a female hemophilia carrier, that means she has one X that's totally normal. That's gonna have, you can either write a capital H with it, and it normally would be a superscript. Let's get technical here. Font, superscript. You normally write it a little higher than the X. So you write it like that. This would be so much easier if I could just handwrite. Okay. So she's gonna have one of those. That's her normal allele, but she's a carrier, so she's also going to have one with a recessive allele. And we can write that with the lowercase h. But again, it really should be superscripted. I think you get the idea. I'm just not gonna bother doing it. Okay, then the male is a hemophilia. So he's a male, so he's going to have an X and a Y, but his X is going to be the recessive one, just like this female that she's carrying. So the male's X is going to be with that recessive H for hemophilia, and then his other allele is going to just be a Y. So I'm just going to make a Y for him and drag it over. So this is how you will set up a cross between these two types of parents, and you will have to fill it in following the same parameters. Like if there is a capital or dominant allele, then you're going to write that one first. So this, I'm going to just kind of copy and paste them and drag them down. We'll go in this box and also in this box. And then this recessive, sorry, I thought I was gonna be able to write, guys. If I knew I had to type it, I would have done it ahead of time. It would have just popped out for you. So these, whoops, I didn't copy it. There it is. Go there, but actually this one's gonna move over here because the Y always gets listed second. And then this one is gonna have just another one of these. And then we have to interpret that. Okay, well, I gotta put this one here too. Okay, so much faster when you write it out by hand. Okay, so in this situation with these two parents, we have this person, this possibility is a female, a daughter, and she is a carrier, but she'll otherwise be normal. She will not be hemophiliac. She will have no blood clotting problems. This person is a female, but she has the recessive, two recessive alleles. So she is going to actually be a hemophiliac. This boy, I forgot to put his Y chromosome in. Right there, okay. This boy is going to have normal hemophilia, normal blood clotting. The capital H is a dominant allele, so he's normal. This boy is going to be the boy who has hemophilia because he has that one recessive H. I see some questions popping up in the side. Yes, you are welcome to just unmute and ask if not everyone is talking, because sometimes I don't see the chat right away because it's not on my screen. So hemophilia and colorblindness are both the two examples of X-linked recessive traits. And when it's X-linked, we have to use this notation where we put the X and Y combination if you're a male, or we put the 2X combination if you're a female. When we're showing sex linkage, we have to use genotypes with sex chromosomes. And so that includes problems with hemophilia, and then includes problems with color blindness. They're both sex-linked on the X chromosome, and they are both recessive, which means to show it, or to be normal, you have to just have the one dominant allele. So to show it, you have to have, if you're a male, no dominant alleles. If you're a female, you would have to have no dominant alleles. Okay, so when you interpret the resulting phenotypes here, make sure you can see where these numbers came from, where these percents came from. So 1 out of these 4 is going to be a female hemophiliac. That is going to be this person right here, my top right box. She's a female hemophiliac. She has 2 recessive H's. The female carrier is going to be this top left box. She has only 1 recessive allele. So she's just a carrier. She'll be normal. She won't have blood clotting problems. The males in the bottom here, the male on the left is going to have the healthy, normal, dominant allele. So he's totally normal, no problems with hemophilia, blood clots normal. The male on the right is going to show hemophilia. Remember, no carriers in males. They either are normal or they show a recessive X-linked trait. Okay, so when you break down all of the possible resulting phenotypes, it's a 25% chance female hemophiliac, 25% chance female carrier, 25% chance male hemophiliac, and 25% male normal. But when you get asked a question in terms of specifically sons or daughters, you got to look only at those combinations. So this question at the bottom, what percentage of their sons will be hemophiliacs? You only look at the bottom of your Punnett square where the 2 males are. What percentage of the sons? It's 1 out of 2. That's 50%. And then if you're asked what percentage of their daughters will be hemophiliacs, you have to only look at the female combinations in the resulting cross. So you only look at the top 2 boxes because they're the only ones that have 2 X's. They're the daughters. And the chance of them being hemophiliacs is 50%, just this 1 out of the 2. Okay, so just be cautious how the question is worded, and then I think you'll be okay. If you want to try to do one more problem, it's going to be a little annoying with me doing the X's and stuff. Maybe we'll just go straight to your practice problems that I assigned you for homework or classwork during yesterday and today. No, yeah, yesterday and today's assignments on Google Classroom. So I am going to pull out of here. So if you recall, if you didn't get to it yet, I assigned you a worksheet that looks like this. And I'm going to zoom in. Oh, my screen sharing is closed. I'm gonna get back to that, what I want you to see. Zoom share. Zoom share. And I want you to show. Why won't it let me show you this? Stop share. Hi, I see everybody back again. I'm trying to share something new. Share screen. I want to share my docs. This is what I want to share. Okay, so do you see my answer key for genetics X-linked genes? I'll pull you back up and hopefully look for a thumbs up. You see my answer key? Yes, awesome. Thank you. Someone gave me a thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, so this is one of the things I assigned to you. Let's go through it. Can I make this zoom in a little bit more? I gotta do it from here. There we go. So you can see it a little better. Oh, I went away. Back in. Okay, so the first question is just asking you to practice with the genotype notation. So they gave you the genotype and you have to interpret the proper phenotype. So first thing you do is interpret combination of sex chromosomes. If there's two X's, it's a female. If it's an X and a Y, it's a male. Okay, so this first example is X capital R, X lowercase r. So I know it's a female because there's two X's. And she has one dominant allele and one recessive allele. And if you notice the little note up at the top, they're telling you eye color is sex-linked in fruit flies, and red is dominant to white. So they're using R to represent dominant red, and the lowercase r would represent white. So this female would be red because she has one dominant allele. This female up underneath also is going to be red, but she just happens to have two dominant alleles. Remember, it doesn't matter if you have one dominant allele or two dominant alleles. Either way, you show the dominant trait, which in this case is red eyes. Now, this next problem here, XRY, you have to realize is a male, and you have to realize he's going to show red because he has that one capital R. You're only going to see the R on the X's because this is an X-linked trait. You're not going to write anything next to the Y because the Y doesn't have this gene for eye color in fruit flies. So the Y is just by itself a Y, no letter next to it. So the male that is X lowercase r with a Y, this bottom male, he's going to show white eyes because he has the recessive allele. And then finally over here on the top right, we have a female again with two X's. And for her to show white eyes, she would need to have two recessive alleles or two lowercase r's. Okay, so we can have a female carrier of the trait, which in this scenario would be the first one listed. You cannot have a male carrier of an X-linked trait. Male's either going to show the dominant trait and be normal, or in this case, the white is like the recessive mutation. Okay, even though it doesn't kill them, it's fine. So now going backwards, they're going to ask you, here's the phenotype, write the genotype. So if it's white-eyed and it's a male, you have to know male, you write XY, and for him to be white, he has to have that recessive lowercase r on his X. For a white-eyed female, she'd have to have two recessive lowercase r's because all she has are X's and they'd have to both be affected for her to show the recessive trait. Okay, so you still need to know the concept of dominant recessive, and you now need to also know the concept of male-female, two X's or XY, and interpret it that way. Okay, so if you are good with interpreting the genotypes and phenotypes and you want to get down to the first problem where they ask you to do a cross, number 3, they say cross a white-eyed female, and they give you the genotype, but you should also be able to come up with that. You'll have to do that in the next problem, with a red-eyed male. Now remember, you're setting up a Punnett square, you're always taking one of each of the two alleles from each parent and isolating them, so you can end up seeing what the combinations are. So if this female is X little r, you take her X little r, and separate them on the outside of your square. if the male, the father, is X big R with a Y, you separate his X big R from his Y. Because remember, what's on the outside of the Punnett square is what he or she can put into his or her gametes. So this male fly can put an X with the dominant allele into his sperm, or he could put the Y into his sperm, one or the other. Okay? Half of your alleles going to each of your gametes, even when you're a fly. So then when you fill in your cross, the proper notation is you would, if there's two X's and one of them has a capital R with one of them has a lowercase r, you still would write the capital first, like we've already learned that notation in autosomal inheritance. And then also if there's a Y, the Y always gets written last. That's just proper notation when you're writing it out so that you can interpret it properly. And if you fill in the boxes, you should end up seeing, in this case, all of the females have red eyes, and all of the males have white eyes. And so then if you were asked to interpret specifically for males, you would say 100% of males are going to have white eyes. 100% of females or daughters will have red eyes. Okay? So you're going to need to do the same thing in the next problem, only you have to come up with the genotype. So if they ask you to cross a pure, remember pure is a simpler word for homozygous, so it's two of the same allele. Pure red-eyed female, that means she has two red alleles, two of the same red alleles. So she's going to be this X uppercase R, X uppercase R. And then they ask for the male to be white-eyed, so he's got to have his X have the recessive R, and then he's got to, of course, have his Y because he's a male. And there's, again, nothing on the Y. The Y is just a Y. The Y does not carry this gene for eye color in fruit flies. So once you figure out the parental genotypes, set up your square, fill in your boxes, and you'll be able to figure out and calculate how many. It said how many, so I just wrote numbers, like how many out of 2 possibilities or out of 4, etc. But you could also do percentages as well.
Ms. Miranda?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have another Zoom.
Okay, no problem. You could just tap out if you need to tap out. I'm going to keep recording, and I'll just share the recording with whoever needs to look at it later. No worries.
Okay, thank you so much, though.
Okay, you're welcome.
How do I leave?
I think there's a button where you could just hit leave meeting. If you can't figure it out, let me know. I can figure out how to kick you out.
On the bottom right.
Oh, I got it. Okay, thank
Got
you.
it? Okay, good.
Have a good day.
You too, sweetie.
Bye.
So the problems on the back are just continuing with the same examples, only this time instead of eye color and flies, it's people with hemophilia. It's the same type of inheritance. It's X-linked. It's recessive. So you're going to just keep using the same notation. They keep doing the same practice problems. When you get to this one in number 9, the calico cats, I didn't teach you about codominance yet, so that one might confuse you a little bit. I thought maybe you could still try it because they did show you the calico genotype. You didn't have to come up with it on your own. So I thought maybe you could figure it out and work it out anyway. Real quick, codominance just means neither allele is recessive. They're both dominant and they're both going to show up. So calico cats have different splotchy colors on their fur because both of those colors show up. We're going to get to that in the next unit eventually. So if you get stuck on number 9, it's not too big a deal. Try to get everything up to number 8 done without a problem. Okay, so that's that. I'm going to go back to your nice, happy faces. Okay. Does anyone have a question? There's another worksheet that you're going to try to do also. I posted both yesterday, for yesterday and today. So you can work on that.
I have a question.
Yes.
For the 2 ed puzzles, were they due today?
Don't worry about the due dates. So I have to put it in so that it has some kind of sequence of flow in the stream. So I'm trying to put everything a due date like a day or 2 past the day it's coming out. Try to do things in order. So if there's an older one you didn't do yet, do that one before you do the newest one. That would be the most sensible, logical pattern for your understanding. So the date is flexible.
Oh, I was going to say, do you see the PDFs? Because some of the worksheets I put them as PDFs.
Yes, I have no problem looking at anything you have attached to Classroom. If I did have a problem seeing it, I'm going to comment where you attached, and I will ask you to resubmit. But I'm seeing everything pretty decently, pretty good.
And I just had a question because I did one of the ed puzzles, and you told me to not to do it yet because you wanted me to do the other one first.
Yes.
Because I already did it.
Okay.
So there was this one question. It was I forgot which one. I think it was the TED Talk one. and it was like the last question, and it said something like, about, it was like 2 answers, and it was like, how would it like be more severe for the men than the women? And it was like with the hemophilia. I was like, and I was
That's-
because I know how it's the men already have it. It's mostly on their whole body, but like the women partially get it in the video.
So we got to remember we're talking about chromosomes, which are in every single cell of your body. So if you're a male and you have a recessive allele on your X chromosome for hemophilia, you have it in every single cell of your body. And that's the only one you have to show. And so males are going to express that hemophilia allele.
But they don't suffer more, right?
Well, suffer more in the sense that they have hemophilia more. They have, yes, they do. That word suffer can be interpreted differently.
Yeah, because I said I
females,
would suffer more.
Yeah, that probably was what was confusing to you then. It's just more about they get it more. They have it more. So females who have just one recessive allele and still have a dominant allele will make enough of the protein that is needed to be made for clotting, so that they're not affected by the disease. So they do still have that one faulty allele, but since they have the other X with the normal dominant allele, they make the protein that clots properly. Males don't have that to do. So that's why males suffer with hemophilia more, males suffer with color blindness more.
That's why men usually get color blindness more, right?
Yes.
Than women.
Yes, tremendously more frequently. The statistics were calculated in the Khan Academy video, if you did that one yet.
I'll do that after.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully the videos will be helpful to you. If you need to redo the videos because you want to get a better score, let me know and I can reset it for you. If you're satisfied with your score and you're like, oh yeah, I see what was wrong now, and you don't want to redo the whole thing, that's fine. It's not a big deal. Just try to aim for like 80% or better. If you're getting a 40 on the video, I'm going to tell you to reset it and try it again.
Okay.
I have a question. Like,
Yes.
the separate for anatomy, for the joints ed puzzle, would you be able to reset it so I could do it one more time?
Just text me and I'll forget before that. Text me and I'll do it.
Yeah.
Okay. You're welcome. So any other sex-linked inheritance questions? The more practice you get, the easier it'll get. So try those worksheets that I uploaded, and I'm going to send you the answer keys so you can check your work with mine. And then next week, we're going to do an online pigeon lab where the pigeon crosses are going to involve traits, some that are autosomal, some that are sex-linked, and you're going to work through these different crosses of pigeons making baby
And you
pigeons.
said this was next week?
Yeah, next week I'm going to post that.
Okay, and you're gonna text us what time of day, right?
What do you mean, for doing another Zoom?
Yeah.
Yeah, if we need to know this. I mean,
Okay.
I'll probably let you do the work first, and then we'll go over it later in the week. That'll be my plan.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Well, it was lovely seeing your faces again. Thank you for those of you who showed your camera. And if you were camera shy this time, maybe I'll see you next time. I miss you. I hope you're doing well. Keep in touch if you need anything. If you have any questions, text me, message me, classroom me, email me. There's so many things of information coming my way. But I'll get to it. I will.
Donating?
All right.
All right. Bye, guys. This was nice.
Bye.
I appreciate it. I thank you for coming.
I'll put it in the microwave.